The King James Bible mentions unicorns 9 times. For centuries, this has been a source of fascination for some and a point of ridicule for others. It's a single word that makes a lot of people ask, is the Bible just a book of fairy tales? But what if I told you that unicorn is the result of a 2,000-year-old translation mystery, and that the real animal it describes was a fearsome beast, way more impressive than any mythical horse, an animal you've probably never even heard of? Today, we're going to solve that mystery. Section 1. The problem of the unicorn. If you grew up with the King James Version of the Bible, seeing the word unicorn pop up is, well, it's weird. You can find it in 9 different places, from the Book of Numbers to Psalms, and even the prophecies of Isaiah. In Numbers 23:22, the Bible says God has, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. In Job 39, God himself challenges Job about this powerful, untamable creature, asking, "Will the unicorn be willing to serve thee, or abide by thy crib? Canst thou bind the unicorn with his band in the furrow?" These verses paint a picture of an animal with incredible power. It's wild, fierce, and can't be domesticated for farm work. For skeptics, these passages have been low-hanging fruit for generations. The argument is simple. The Bible talks about unicorns. Unicorns are mythical, so the Bible can't be trusted. It's a point that can create a crisis of faith, making people wonder if the book they hold sacred has elements of fantasy. But as we're about to see, this whole conclusion is based on a misunderstanding of words, history, and a very large, very real animal that has been lost to time. The journey to the truth doesn't start with the English word unicorn, but with a single, mysterious word in ancient Hebrew. Section 2. The start of the mystery. The original Hebrew word, rem. The Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew, and where the King James says unicorn, the Hebrew text uses the word ram. This is the real name of our mystery animal. The word rem shows up 9 times, and if you look at the context, you can piece together a pretty clear profile of the animal. The Bible consistently describes the ram as a symbol of raw strength and wild, untamable power. Moses compares God's power to the strength of a ram. The book of Job stresses that it's an animal that will not bow to human authority. You can't harness it to a plow. And in Psalm 22, the writer cries out to be saved from the horns of the re'amim. And yes, he uses the plural word for horns. That's a critical clue, so hang on to it. The evidence points to a large, 2-horned, incredibly strong, and wild bovine-like creature. It was clearly a real animal, familiar to the ancient Israelites, and used as a metaphor for power precisely because everyone knew how terrifying it was. It definitely wasn't a magical horse. So how did this powerful 2-horned beast become the 1-horned unicorn of legend? Well, the first mix-up happened during a massive translation project over 2,200 years ago. Section 3. A game of telephone begins. The Greek monokeros. Around the 3rd century BCE, a huge project began in Alexandria, Egypt, to translate the Hebrew scriptures into Greek. This translation, called the Septuagint, was for Greek-speaking Jews who couldn't read Hebrew anymore. But the translators hit a snag. The animal known as the re'am was becoming rare, maybe even extinct in the areas where these scholars lived. Not totally sure which animal the text meant, they made an educated guess. They chose the Greek word monokeros, which literally means 1-horned. Now, this wasn't as crazy as it sounds. Monoceros was a term Greek writers often used for powerful horned animals, most famously the rhinoceros. To them, it seemed like a plausible fit for the powerful beast in the Hebrew texts. This was the first and most fateful decision in a long game of translational telephone. The Hebrew word re'em, which described a real wild ox, was now officially translated as monoceros, a one-horned creature. For centuries, anyone reading the Bible in Greek would no longer picture a wild ox, but a one-horned beast. This single word choice set the stage for a myth that would last for millennia. Section 4. The error is cemented in Latin. Our next stop is the 4th century CE. A scholar named Jerome was given the massive task of creating a standard Latin translation of the Bible for the Western world. This version, the Latin Vulgate, became the official Bible of the Catholic Church for more than 1,000 years. Working from the Greek Septuagint, Jerome came across the word monoceros. He did what any good translator would do. He translated it literally into Latin. The Greek mono, for one, became the Latin uni. The Greek keros, for horn, became the Latin cornu. And just like that, monoceros became unicornus. Like its Greek predecessor, unicornus just meant one-horned and was often used to describe the rhinoceros. Jerome wasn't trying to invent a myth. He was just faithfully carrying over the word choice from the Greek translators centuries earlier. But because the Vulgate was the Bible for all of Western Christendom for over 1,200 years, the word unicornus got locked into the religious and cultural imagination. So when English translators, like the ones behind the King James Version in 1611, set to work, they leaned heavily on the trusted Latin Vulgate. They took the Latin unicornus, anglicized it, and the word unicorn officially entered the English Bible. So we've solved the first part of the mystery. We know how the word unicorn ended up in the Bible, a chain of translation from Hebrew to Greek to Latin to English. But that leaves the biggest question. If the ram wasn't a unicorn, what was it? The answer is one of the most incredible beasts of the ancient world. If you're enjoying this historical detective story, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into mysteries of the past. Section 5. Cracking the Case. The Fearsome Aurochs. Thanks to modern archaeology and linguistics, scholars are now pretty confident about the identity of the biblical Re'em. The leading candidate with overwhelming evidence is the aurochs, or Bos primigenius. The aurochs was a species of massive wild cattle, the ancestor of every cow you see today, and they were enormous, standing up to 6 feet tall at the shoulder. A big bull could weigh over 2,000 pounds. They had huge, forward-curving horns that could be nearly 3 feet long, and they were famous across the ancient world for their incredible strength and aggressive, untamable nature. They roamed Europe, Asia, and North Africa, including the ancient Near East, right where the biblical writers lived. This animal fits the biblical description of the Re'em perfectly. Its insane strength is a perfect metaphor for God's power. Its wild, ferocious nature explains why Job describes it as impossible to tame for farm work. And critically, it has 2 powerful horns, matching the plural horns mentioned in Psalm 22. Archaeological evidence backs this up. Ancient Akkadian texts from a related language talk about a similar animal called the Raimu, often shown in art as a massive wild ox. The link between Raimu and Re'em is widely accepted by scholars. Tragically, due to hunting and habitat loss, the very last aurochs died in a Polish forest in 1627, just 16 years after the King James Bible was published. Section 6. From 2 horns to 1. There's one last piece to this puzzle. If the aurochs had 2 giant horns, why on earth did the Greek translators call it monokeros, or one-horned? There are a few good theories. The most popular one has to do with ancient art. Assyrian and Babylonian artists often carved bulls and aurochs in strict profile, with one horn hiding the other. To a scholar in Alexandria, who had never seen one in real life but was familiar with these carvings, it could have easily looked like a one-horned creature. Another possibility is that monokeros was just the closest word they had for a famously strong, horned beast. Since the term was already associated with the powerful rhinoceros, they might have picked it for its connotation of strength, even if the horn count was off. It's also possible that stories of aurochs losing a horn in battle were common enough to influence the name. Whatever the exact reason, it was this visual or linguistic mix-up that led to the one-horn label. The mistake of the Septuagint translators wasn't that they believed in fairy tales, but that they likely misidentified a real, 2-horned animal they had never seen for themselves. Section 7. Setting the record straight. Modern translations. This whole saga really highlights why it's so important to go back to the original languages and historical context. Modern Bible translations, armed with archaeological and linguistic knowledge the King James translators just didn't have fixed this ancient error. If you pick up a new international version, NIV, an English Standard Version, ESV, or a New American Standard Bible, NASB, today, you won't find the word unicorn. Instead, in those 9 verses, you'll see the term wild ox. This simple change brings back the original power of the text. The point was never about a mythical creature. It was about the raw, awe-inspiring strength of a real animal that was the ultimate symbol of power in the ancient world. Correcting the translation removes a stumbling block for modern readers and shows that understanding the Bible is an ongoing process of discovery, constantly sharpened by history and archaeology. Conclusion. So why does the King James Bible mention unicorns? Not because its writers believed in magical horses, but because of a 2,000-year-old translation chain that turned a real, formidable beast into a legendary one. The powerful Hebrew Re'em, the mighty aurochs, was first mistaken for a monokeros, or one-horned beast, by Greek translators. That word was then faithfully carried into Latin as unicornus, and finally into English as unicorn. The story of the biblical unicorn isn't about myth, it's about meaning getting lost in translation. It's a detective story where the culprit is linguistics, and the victim is a magnificent, fearsome animal forgotten by time. And in the end, the real animal, the wild ox, was far more impressive and terrifying than any fairy tale creature could ever be. Understanding this history doesn't weaken the text's credibility. It actually strengthens it by revealing a logical explanation rooted in the real, gritty world of the ancient past. What do you think about this translation mystery? Did you ever read about unicorns in the Bible and wonder what was going on? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed solving this piece of biblical history, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories hidden in the text. Thanks for watching.